You are listening to the new man beyond the macho jerk and the new age wimp. Your host is men's coach Tripp Lanier.
If someone has betrayed or hurt you, do you let thoughts of getting even get the best of you? Do you allow the horror stories of the world to keep you from enjoying a positive life? And what can you do to empower yourself through an emotional tragedy? Fitness expert and podcast host Ted Ryce is here to share his story of murder and loss, and more importantly, how he finds the power to keep a positive outlook on life. So I want to set a warning before we start this interview. This episode features graphic descriptions of a horrific crime that was committed against a child. I also want to say that everybody handles loss and tragedy differently. Nobody expects you to do it alone. So this is your life. It's the only one you've got. And if you're going through a tough time, be willing to invest in yourself and find a good therapist or professional to help you out. Welcome to The New Man. Today we're talking with Ted Ryce. He's a health and fitness expert, also a competitive martial artist, and he's the host of the Alpha Man podcast. Ted, thanks for talking today.
Tripp, I'm really excited to be on the show, man.
You were kind enough to have me on your podcast, and we talked about some kind of big picture stuff. And you have such a pedigree and such a background in fitness and martial arts, but that's not what I want to dive into necessarily today. What I want to explore with you is I want to help the guy that's out there that's listening right now, and maybe he's been dealt a tough hand. He's got some tough situation that involves somebody else, where he's been hurt or he's been betrayed, and there's just, when I've been in this place, I remember I've been in this place several times in my life where it seems like the only way I'm going to find peace is if I get back at this person or something bad happens to them. I don't like to admit that I've thought this, but I think there's just this primitive part of ourselves that goes to this place, but basically our peace of mind is held hostage by somebody else and what's happening for them. And so I want to just explore some of the things that have happened in your life, because you've experienced some immense loss. You've experienced some incredible, violent, it's some really tough stuff. But I want to explore that and just see how you've been able to turn some of these tragedies into triumph, and not let it necessarily get the best of you, because you're out in the world right now with a very positive message. I know you're not perfect. You're not saying you got a perfect life or anything, but you've got something. You've really turned this situation into a way to empower others, and that's what I want to highlight today. You up for that?
Absolutely, Tripp. And thank you for saying all those things about me. And that's what I'm trying to do. Someone said on my show that experts are just people who have been winging it longer than you have. And, I've been winging it for a long time. So I'm just a normal guy, just like everybody else is. And,
okay.
And I've trained celebrities in my personal training business, and people are always like, oh, what about this? They're normal people. They go to the bathroom sitting down, and they have to eat several times a day. We're all just kind of normal people. But the more we can do to build ourselves up, to work on ourselves, that's what makes us better, becoming better versions of ourselves.
All right.
So, yeah, man, it's to my story. First off, I want to say that I don't want to diminish anybody else's pain or what anybody else has been through, because I don't think that's something that really has a positive effect on people. But I will say this, I have a really rough story. So hopefully that it can inspire you to look beyond your own pain and suffering and own events in your life, and maybe get some perspective on things, because that's what had to happen with me, Tripp.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because we could turn this into a big buzzkill. We could turn this into a thing that just drags us down. But ultimately, I want it to be something that after the guys listen to this, he's walking a little taller, a little straighter, a little more grateful, and a little more empowered. So
I love it.
All right, well, let's start off. Here comes the bumpy ride. What happened to you at age 14?
Well, my life was turned upside down a little bit. My mother passed away in a car accident, which that's right when I was going into high school, and I just really lost it. I was so angry. There's a backstory there, which I don't think we need to go into. But my parents were divorced when I was about 6. My mother was psychiatrically ill. There were a lot of unresolved issues, and I was supposed to go over to her house that weekend. My dad had custody of my sister and me, and which is highly unusual. That's the type of illness she had. But I had a lot of guilt about not going over there that weekend, and she died in a car crash. And it really started me out very poorly in high school. I was just a angry kid and acting out, and I barely got through it. I ran away from home for a week, stole my parents' car, and drove off. And I'm not a dick. I'm not an asshole. I'm a good person, but I was angry. I was hurt, and I didn't know what to do. So I did whatever I wanted to do,
And did you find at that time, was there a story, and when we're so young like that, it's, we're just starting to get a glimpse of what the world's all about, and then we're dealt something like that. I lost my mom unexpectedly when I was 13, and I can kind of imagine what that was like for you. But what were some of the things that you were taking? Oh, the world is this way, or life is fucked, or like, do you remember some of the things you were starting to tell yourself about the world?
Yeah, I mean, you went through a very similar thing. You're kind of an idiot at 14. You're just a dumb kid, and the testosterone is just beginning to flow. And I was just more like an animal acting out on whatever emotions popped up.
So you didn't even know you had all this energy, you had all this emotion, just didn't even know what to do with it.
Yeah, and okay. I did lose my innocence in that way. I had never had anything like that happen. And like I said, it was a complex situation with her because she was mentally ill. And basically, my sister and we were her whole life. And there was a lot of guilt around that. But honestly, she's probably better off where she is now. And so anyway, I barely made it through school, smoking a lot of weed, drinking a lot, partying a lot, smoking cigarettes. The only thing I did work out. I was into fitness and I was eating better. And, although I had the typical fast food diet, I was also into martial arts. I started martial arts then, and I never really could take it seriously because I was partying so much and hanging out with a bunch of kind of bad kids and, hooking up with girls. I was never a popular kid in school, but I was definitely infamous, Tripp.
Okay. All right.
But nothing too terrible. Just the stoner kid who, who's kind of bad. So, I walked out of a class one time. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, did the martial arts provide any kind of structure, any kind of outlet for that, or was it just kind of auxiliary at that time?
No, it really was. And I was working out at that time too. I was doing a lot of strength training, and both of those things helped, but I trained consistently with martial arts, but I never really gave it my all. But it did help. It kept me from getting into even more trouble. And I was very interested in the philosophy of martial arts at that time because I felt unempowered. And I was bullied in junior high, and I had some anger about that. But that isn't even the big story. The big story came when I was 19. I had graduated high school by the skin of my teeth, and I got into college. I was just starting to do well. I got good grades for the first time in my whole entire life because I was a trouble kid even before my mom died. But again,
right,
we don't have time to go into all that.
Right.
But when I was 19, my parents went out. I lived up where I was going to school, about 45 minutes away from where my parents and my brother lived. And my sister was in school in Chile studying Spanish and being a transfer student and having that experience. And I skipped school one day because my parents were out of town, and my buddy was going to be the a really good friend of mine, a guy who I got into a lot of trouble with and had a lot of good memories in high school. He was watching my brother, and I was skipping school in my old high school ways to go and meet up with him and hang out. And I got there. My brother's piano teacher was waiting for him. And my brother, by the way, was 9 years old at the time. This is when I was 19.
Right.
And my friend hadn't gotten off of work to go meet with my brother. And my brother wasn't there. I called my parents. They freaked out right away. I was like, he's just over at a friend's house playing around, just being a dumb kid. And but for some reason, they were really worried. And they came home right away. They were a few hours away. They were vacationing a few hours away, but still in Florida. And and so what started off really casual, no big deal. And then as the hours started to go on, things got more intense. The police showed up, helicopters were deployed, people were looking everywhere for my brother, my 9-year-old brother, but he was nowhere to be found. And that was the start of a 3-month journey through hell, Tripp, because I feel like I aged during that time. The FBI showed up, and my parents were interrogated. My friend and I were interrogated as suspects for the disappearance of my brother.
Right. Wow.
We were put through lie detector tests, and we were just a couple of dumb stoner kids. And, I said I was getting my life together, but, I still had some bad habits. And, but they would come at 3:00 in the morning and search my whole house and search my car. And I was, subjected to all this stuff. And they would ask me questions like, have you ever hit your brother? And I'm like, he's my 9-year-old brother. I put boxing gloves on him and knock him in the head a couple of times. Of course, typical stuff, kind of being a dick to my siblings. Right. But we loved each other, and, he looked up to me and I loved him. And so a 3-month search happened, and my parents made it a big issue. It became national news that this kid was missing because my parents were both attorneys, kind of high profile people. My mom was an attorney for the government, for the IRS, and my dad had his own law business and law practice, and was very well established in Florida. And eventually the FBI went away, the homicide, because there was no incriminating evidence to be found in my family. And the homicide department kind of did the same thing, but they were a lot nicer. And they didn't find anything, and they started to work on other things. And we started to look around the neighborhood and search for leads. And there were all types of leads came in, and psychics, and it was just crazy.
Wow.
But 3 months later, he went missing on September 11th, 9/11. Easy to remember date now.
Yeah.
But 3 months later, a woman who lived in our neighborhood had a guy working for her who lived on her property in a trailer. She was missing some jewelry, and she was also missing a handgun. And she went into her trailer, the trailer on her property where the guy lived, and looked for the stuff. She did not find the stuff that was missing, but what she found forever changed everyone's lives, of my family's life, everybody who was involved. And she found a book bag, my brother's book bag, with books and his names in it. And she also found a missing children's poster, which we had been putting up. It makes no sense that one of them would have been in his book bag. She immediately called the homicide department. The police got the guy, interrogated him for hours, and he led them on a wild goose chase and started telling them stories like, first of all, he wasn't, into it at all. He had nothing to do with it. He just found the book bag. Then he blamed it on someone else. And he said that he had hit my brother and then dumped his body in a canal, was one of the things he said. But eventually he broke down and told the police what happened, what he did. And it turned out that day on September, he as my brother was getting dropped off from the school bus about a block away from my house and walking home, just like he did every single day, he rolled up in his pickup truck, pulled out that gun that he stole from his employer, told my brother to get in the car, he was going to shoot him. And unfortunately, my brother didn't run. He didn't scream. He didn't fight. He didn't flick him off, tell him to go fuck himself and haul ass.
Right.
He got in the truck. The guy supposedly grabbed him, threw him down to the bottom, held him down, and sped off. He took him to a trailer no less than a mile away from my house. He raped him repeatedly. He played psychological games with him and said, when my brother asked him, are you going to kill me? He said, what do you think? And after all that had happened, we were still looking for him, and they heard the helicopters that day flying over the trailer. And my brother, after everything he went through, after being raped, after being humiliated, after being tortured, he made a run for it. And this guy pulled out the gun, shot him through the chest. The bullet pierced his heart. He fell to the ground, dying. And after that, he took my brother and decapitated him, cut off his arms and legs, and put him into a flower pot, filled it with cement, and probably hoped that nobody would ever find this kid and we would never know what happened. And we probably wouldn't, Tripp, but if it weren't for that woman who found the book bag in that trailer and called the police and caught the guy. And just recently, just to cap it off, this year, this is February, we're in 2014. It's just the start of July now. But in February, my father and I, who are the only family members left alive, we went and watched him put to death. We have front row seats in the viewing room and watched him executed by way of lethal injection. So we finally got what we wanted. And I know you had said something about the revenge and not putting so much power in another person's, not putting so much power over us in another person's hands. For the most part, I don't hold grudges, but that was a situation where I felt that he had crossed a line, that he needed to die for what he did. And that's what happened. And yeah, but it was that was 19 years ago. The execution happened 19 years later, just a few months ago. And it's been a tough road since then. And I've had a lot of ups and downs, but I'm up right now, Tripp. So, and that's the message that I want to bring to people. As horrible as that story is, there are ways of overcoming any type of tragedy you've ever been through. And that's what I want to bring forth to everyone listening today.
I got tears in my eyes. I guess, God, I have a daughter, I just trying to imagine that. I think where I'd like to take it is, just to acknowledge you. I really appreciate you first just sharing that. That's just thank you. And I would like to dive in because 19 years is a long time, and 19 years is a long time to expect that peace will come. Whatever to hang, whatever expectation would be created, that's going to hang upon watching this man take his last breath. And so, what did you find? What did happen for you as you watched your brother's killer die?
I felt that justice was served. And when I mean that, I don't mean revenge. I don't mean my dad and I taking this dude by ourselves to a back alley and doing what we would have done with him had it been up to us. I mean that it was done in a way that our society sanctioned, meaning that he was taken away all hope of ever having life or having society change and saying, you know what, we can't keep criminals in there. So what if he raped and murdered a kid 20 years ago? Like, you know, we can't just keep him in prison. We never wanted any of that to be an issue. We wanted him dead. And by the way, that is happening with someone else, someone whose child was murdered there. And she's actually against the death penalty. And that's her belief. That's fine. It's not mine. But there is someone who's getting out who had murdered her child in California because of the laws there. And I'm really thankful that that will never be an issue for my father nor me. And what happened, I felt empowered. You know, I felt like we made a difference. Like we made a statement to everybody. Like justice was served, like like my sister, who we can talk about this too. She committed suicide 2 years ago, in part from what happened in her life, what happened in our life, what we've had to go through. And my stepmom, who was Jim's mother, was died from a heart attack. She lost it after Jim was, I say she lost, she stopped taking care of her health, but she and my father, they both pushed forward. They met with 2 presidents. They met with President Clinton. They met with President George W. Bush. They got laws passed to help your child, Tripp, and the children of every mother and father who are listening to this show, especially for sexual predators. Now they're being kept. They don't just get let out because they have a high rate of repeating the same crime. These are really broken people. Yeah. It's not like, oh, well, I robbed a liquor store because, you know, I was a little short on cash. I didn't know what to do. Yeah. But I found Jesus and everything's better. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. These people are really have sex with a kid and molest children. And it's just a deeper type of mental illness is really what it is.
Did you find that you know that you wanted revenge, that you and your father wanted to take this guy into an alley, and was that ever a part of it?
I mean, Tripp, if it were under different circumstances, I really believe in that type of retribution. And I'll tell you why, because it's not just some like, yeah, well, you take our eye, I'm going to take your eye type of good old boy bullshit. What I believe is that violence is a tool that men use, mostly men. Women use it too, but we're talking about men here. That's who killed my brother. And violence is a tool that men use to get what they want when other things don't work. It's a way to solve their problems. And I really believe in showing that violence doesn't pay by using violence. And to use a statement that a buddy of mine, Tim Larkin, who teaches Navy SEALs, hand-to-hand combat. He teaches all types of people, but he's very well respected by special forces and all types of people. He says that violence is rarely the answer, but when it's the answer, it's the only answer. And there's another person, Michael, I can't pronounce his last name for the life of me. It's Jiglery or something kind of really difficult to pronounce. Okay. And he's a primatologist, and he's also looked into societies and how they deal with violence. And I really was motivated by reading his work. And he believes that we need to punish people when it comes down to violence. Now, we're not talking about robbing someone's stereo or anything like that. Or selling weed, or we're talking about violent crime, violence against another human being, that it needs to be dealt with on a commensurate level. So I believe in that. And I'm willing to, with all my martial arts training, I am willing to take the life of someone who threatens my life or the life of people that I care about. I will never appeal or never attempt to appeal to the humanity of someone who obviously doesn't have any. I will take their life. Yeah. And that is my personal belief. You may not agree with it. Your listeners may not agree with it. That's fine. It's a choice we all need to make. But
what about when it comes down to dealing with the grief and the hurt? Like, there's nothing, we're not in a situation where Because I can remember things that have happened, and it's like I want to go back and replay that. I get stuck in this maze of I should have done this or I should have done that, and if I could have, I would have hit him, and all this kind of stuff. And it's just it takes me out of the opportunities in the present, takes me out of the opportunities of the future because I'm still stuck in the past, and I'm in this violent exchange within myself. Was that ever a part of your experience?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point, Tripp, and I'm glad you got me off my little pedestal there. But yeah, because most people may not deal with that type of situation. But like you said, many people will deal with this internal struggle, and people will look at me and say, "Oh, how'd you get over that?" And but the answer is it's kind of the same for everybody. I mean, to some extent, it must be individualized. Like some things will work better for other people than me, for example. But it comes down to basic principles. And I think number one is taking care of your health. We know that the food you eat, the types of exercise that you do, the amount of exercise that you do has profound effects on how happy you are. Or to geek out, it has effects on your hormonal levels and your neurotransmitter levels. But to put it in English, it makes you feel better and it makes you happier. And that's a huge part of it, taking care of yourself. And people expect to be happy. Why am I not happy? It's like, well, have you tried exercising? You sit on the couch and play video games or surf the net. You got to take care of yourself. And if you're not happy and you don't exercise, then don't expect to be happy. I don't care what has gone on in your life.
Well, it's just such a powerful shift that you did just then. We went from here's the perpetrator. I need to level the perpetrator. I need to, it's in the past, right? There's nothing that I can really do. This guy's, in handcuffs or whatever. But then what is it that I can do? How can I reclaim my quality of life today? How can I reclaim my quality of life going forward? And the first thing you said was take better care of yourself, which it makes so much sense, but we don't. Most of us are not doing that. We neglect ourselves. We're caught up in our own emotional world, and we get into this loop where we allow our physical lives to then pull down our emotional world because we're not taking care of ourselves. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, if you're not willing to take care of yourself physically, just accept that you're not going to be that happy. Okay. There you go.
It's that simple.
It's that simple. And, you have to work. If you want to feel good, you want to be happy, you want to feel like you have lots of energy, you want to have a great sex drive, you got to work for it. You got to earn it. And that's by taking care of your body, getting good quality sleep, good quality nutrition. Obviously, we can go into a lot of detail, but maybe on another podcast, but we can come back and talk about something less serious.
Yeah.
And but you have to physically, you have to make your muscles work. You got to sleep well and you got to eat well.
And so when did you, was this the path for you? At what point did you wake up to this and say, wait a second? Because you admitted, you said you were eating like shit and you weren't really taking good care of yourself. How did you discover the importance of taking better care of yourself in order to heal emotionally too?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, we kind of jump back and forth there. To rewind a bit, after I really hit bottom, not when we found out what happened, but a year later when the trial happened. And I really, no need to go into any more negative stuff than what I've already shared, but I really hit bottom hard, guys, real hard, as low as anybody can ever be. I've been there. And, but what happened, thank God, not too long, not too many years later, I got a job as a personal trainer when I was 22 years old. So from 19 when it happened, took me a couple years, but I got a job when I was 22, and I had a shitty job before that. No need to go into that, but it wasn't fun, guys. And I was living in a nice building. Although I had a shitty job, I was making enough to live in this nice building. I would go to the gym to work off some steam because I was eating like shit, but I always had health in the back of my mind. So I slowly became more healthy, but I gave up my shitty job. I used my savings to get my personal trainer certification, and I jumped into I got a job at the first place I interviewed. They didn't even want to let me train people for 2 years, Tripp. But I was so pumped and happy. I felt like I was doing the right thing. And I was in the right situation. I just started grabbing people and training them off the floor and just showing them new exercises and showing them workouts that they let me train people within a couple months.
Wow.
So that's when everything changed for me, when health became my business. So I had to learn about it. I had to apply it to other people. And the second thing I would say is, to live for something greater than yourself. So I was helping other people. I was helping further this health knowledge. And so it wasn't so much about me anymore. I was helping other people. And that was therapy for me.
Yeah. There's two huge, powerful points there. And, the first is to take care of yourself. It's not to dissociate. It's not to deny yourself. But, then from this place of health and valuing ourselves, then it's okay. There's more to this life than just me and my worries and my problems and how I think I should look to other people. It's who can I help? What contribution can I make? What kind of service can I bring to the world? Most of the time when I run into people who are really, really struggling and complaining, they're in this like place of mirrors. Like they can't see anything other than themselves and their problems and their worries. So I'm not advocating that we stick our head in the sand and don't acknowledge what the challenges are in our life. But I love that you found the same thing that I found, is that I'm a lot happier when I'm helping other people. It's just, I don't have to think about my own shit as much, I guess. So I just like it.
Yeah, and you made a great point when you said you don't want to stick your head in the sand, because a lot of people will neglect themselves and help other people because they don't get to focus on their bullshit.
It's kind of the martyr, this kind of martyrdom thing.
Yeah. But the thing is, if you're working on yourself, if you're making sure that you're okay, I'm eating well, I'm working out, I'm making time for myself. But then after, you have to be selfish in that way. Selfish in the sense that you have to put yourself first to be an example for other people so that you can show up and be your best so you can help them more. So it's not maybe even really selfish is not the right word. But after you do that, then you start taking care of other people. But absolutely, just focusing on you and your own bullshit. And like you said, I love the way that metaphor you use, where it's like everywhere I look, I see myself in a mirror. It's, you got to get away from that.
Yeah.
And just a quick point, someone had asked me, like, one of the media people, because I was interviewed by national media, I was interviewed by local media for my brother's story, and they were like, actually just recently, and they asked me, do you ever wonder why you, Ted? I'm like, oh man. And I said, no. It's like, right. It's such bullshit. I mean, God, if you're listening, I love you, but media people, because you helped me you helped my father and I get our message out. But at the same time, I said, look at all the horrible stuff happening in the world. Look at history. Now, I personally believe that that humanity is, however imperfectly, stumbling towards a better future. I honestly believe that. We got people like you, Tripp, and people like me getting out there and trying to help people. That was unheard of 15 years ago. Good things are happening in the world. But to put our pain in perspective, look at what's happening in Africa or Syria or all these other crazy places. It's horrible what happened to my brother, and there's no amount of well, look at that tragedy. It's like, yeah, but I didn't experience it. I actually felt this to my core. But at the same time, understand that you're a part of something greater. You're part of human history. And there's been a lot of bad shit that's happened in the past. There's a lot of bad shit going on now. A lot of bad shit will happen in the future. But you know what? Put it in perspective. We're living in the best time that you could ever live in. We have more opportunity. There's more things available to help you past any problem that you could ever encounter right now. So be excited about that and be grateful for that.
It's powerful words coming from you. It's a great reminder. It's all how we choose to look at it. We can get stuck in our world and continuously find evidence. I think a lot of us will go through the world looking for injustices. We look for things to support a story that says my life is fucked, or we look for ways to support a story that we have that the world is fucked. And I think if we were to bring that awareness to what's possible, what's going well, as I hear you say, and as I believe, there's some awful, awful things in this world, and we can choose to look at and see the world in a positive light too. I love that we're stumbling towards even what did you say? Stumbling towards a better future.
Humanity is moving towards a better future. We're stumbling towards it.
Yeah.
We're imperfect, but that's okay. Don't let the fact that the media shows and research has shown up to 17 negative stories per one positive. Don't let that get in your head, guys. That's a perspective.
Yeah.
And it's not a real one. And the fact that you can't tell me how many light poles you drove past on your way to work today and on the way back. They were in your life. You passed every single one of them. But because your perspective wasn't there, you have no idea. So like you said, Tripp, what you choose to focus on is huge. And by focusing on things, by taking responsibility and focusing on things that you can exert and that you can make a difference with, that's what it's all about. And it starts with yourself.
Beautiful. Well, you're walking that. You're inspiring me today. We're not playing some kumbaya bullshit that there are some awful things out there, but yes, what we choose to focus on and what we can choose to do about it are the most important, the most powerful things. Thank you. Where can we learn more about you? Tell us about your podcast and all the other things you're offering.
Yeah, I have a podcast called the Alpha Man Project, and I had Tripp on there, and at first he didn't like the name Tripp, and some people don't, and it's cool, but it's not about like swinging your dick around and being a macho, arrogant prick. It's just being the alpha man or alpha male. To me, it's just a metaphor for becoming your best, most badass version of yourself. And I talk a lot about health and fitness, and I interview martial artists and former Navy SEALs and people who I feel are really experts in the health and fitness industry. So really usable advice, practical stuff that you can apply. And it's not just hype and trying to get you to buy stuff that's not really going to serve you. It's personal development with an edge, kind of similar to what you're doing, but different. And and it was a pleasure to have you on. And, I have a variety of guests. And if anybody wants to check it out, I would love to have you come and listen and see if you like it or not. And if it's for you, great. And if it's not, hey, that's okay. There's something for everybody out there. It's the beauty of the age that we live in now.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about the foundation that you and your family have.
Yeah, it's called the Jimmy Rice Center, and Tripp will, I'm sure, put up the link to it in his notes. But we donate bloodhounds to law enforcement for free. We only use the money to help raise the bloodhounds and to keep the website afloat. And we would be honored if any of your listeners would donate to it, because for every $1,000 that we make, we donate another bloodhound. Why bloodhounds? Short story. They're short of implanting your kid with a GPS chip to know where they're at all times.
Yeah.
Bloodhounds are the best technology that we have. There's just countless story. I don't want to take up too much time, but there's countless stories of them finding missing people, and they even found a fugitive the other day. They are just powerful. They slobber a lot, Tripp.
Yeah, I know. But what's the name of the foundation again?
It's the Jimmy Rice Center, and it's jimmyrice.org.
Okay, we'll do. And we'll have the link up on the site too. Ted Ryce, thank you so much for coming in and talking today. I don't even know what I've taken away so far. I'm going to have to go think about it for a while, but thank you very much.
You got it, Tripp. I had a great time, man.
If these interviews are helping you, then please visit The New Man on iTunes and leave us a positive review so others can discover the show more easily. Thanks for listening.